Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our next section in the political process unit, campaign finance. Today, we're going to take a look at what kind of money these campaigns raise in order to get their candidates elected. So, what do candidates spend the most money on? TV, radio, hiring staff, mail ads, online ads, newspaper. All these different things are things that they pour their money into. As you're going to see, advertisements and using those propaganda techniques that we talked about last time are all things that they pour their money into in order to persuade undecided or moderate voters to vote for them and their party. What is campaign finance? So, just so we're clear, campaign finance refers to the money that is spent by candidates running for office. Running for political office is extremely expensive, especially in the past few years. How much money do you think Trump's campaign spent? As it turns out, in his 2016 campaign, the Trump campaign spent a total of $322 million, which is actually significantly below the average amount used by a campaign to run and win political office. What we're seeing here is a pattern over the past 30, 40 years that our data can back up. The records show that the candidate that spends the most money usually wins the election. However, if we look at our most recent one, the 2016 election, you can see that Hillary Clinton raised a significant amount of more money than Donald Trump. There's a lot of different reasons we'll discuss during class for that. The big idea with all of this is that because it's so expensive, it impacts who can participate in a political campaign. Following are ways the rising costs have affected what we see and know of political campaigns. The first thing to think about is that it requires extensive fundraising activities. Candidates have to go and dedicate a significant amount of time to raise money from voters, companies, political organizations, interest groups, etc. They need that money to compete with their opponents and to purchase advertisements. The second thing we notice is that it limits the opportunities to run for public office due to lack of funds. And as we're going to see, it's going to impact who runs due to this limit. Because wealthy people have an advantage when they run for political office because they can use their own money to finance it. So that whole idea of having more money impacts your success in a political campaign. And the fourth thing that occurs is it encourages a group to form. These groups are called political action committees. We also have something called super PACs. We mentioned these in the case of Citizens United, where we discussed how spending money is actually a part of your First Amendment right to express yourself. These groups have formed around certain ideas and from different groups of people that are really determined to get their candidate elected. And this is a way around limits that have been put on how much you can donate to just a candidate. So let's talk about political action committees for a moment. Okay, so what is a political action committee, or a PAC, as I will refer to them? A PAC is a political organization that supports candidates by contributing money. That's their sole purpose, is to pool money together and to spend it to help campaigns win. It gives them a huge advantage. When political action committees support campaigns, it gives them quite a bit of an advantage. So we have like-minded individuals that all get together. Typically, these people are friends of the candidates. They pool their money together, and they purchase advertisements for that campaign. But there is one rule. They cannot work with the campaign. They can't collaborate. So they're separate of the political campaign. Our last big impact that we see with the rising cost of campaigning is that interest groups have an increased influence. Interest groups raise a ton of money as well, just like a PAC. And they also donate to the campaigns and create their own ads, pretty much campaign on their own for a specific candidate that they know would support them. Here's an example of some interest groups. We have the NRA, we have ExxonMobil, that's a corporation, the American Medical Association, PETA, the NEA, which is the National Education Association, one of our education unions. These groups pool their money together and purchase their own ads to support candidates as well as donate to their campaigns. So what does this all look like in real life? Let's take a look at some data. If you look at the Obama campaign, you see how much money he raised here, $52 million. That's just his campaign. That excludes his PACs and super PACs, which also put money into their campaigning for him. We see the amount that is compared to building the Lincoln Memorial, which was $40 million, or the Washington Monument. And we also see who he campaigned against in 2012, the Romney campaign, which was significantly shorter, almost by half, which leads to that statement, the campaign or candidate that raised the most money and spend the most money typically wins. We see some data from an Illinois election in 2016 and how much money was spent there. $67 million, and these are local elections. It's a lot of money. People want to change the way money is spent? Absolutely. The amount of money that floats around in politics can be concerning. So there have been efforts that have been taken place to reform campaign finance laws. Because the rising campaign costs have led to efforts to reform to all this, we see a few results. First thing is, we see a limit on how much individuals can directly contribute to a political party in the campaign. That limit is $2,800. So myself, I can only give $2,800 to a campaign. Individuals, businesses, and unions can donate unlimited amounts to what we call PACs and super PACs. So I can give my $2,800 to the campaign directly, and then I can give my $75 million to the PAC in order for them to help that candidate that I like win election. PACs can spend unlimited amounts of money as long as they do not collaborate with the candidate or campaign directly. We see a lot of these PACs over here. Just a few examples where we see these PACs that raise millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, spend them on their candidates to help them win. However, there's no collaboration between that candidate's campaign and the PAC themselves. So they're all on their own, spending their own money. However, with the support of a PAC or a super PAC, it definitely gives the candidate an advantage. It gets their name out there more. Now, we had Citizens United versus the FEC. This is the case that we looked at during the First Amendment. We see that in 2010, the Supreme Court decided that money donated to campaigns is a form of speech. So it's protected by the First Amendment. It removed some of the limitations placed on donations, which allowed for larger amounts of money to be spent, especially by PACs and super PACs, which we see when we go back to that original graph that we were discussing. We see the different shades on this graph, this represents PACs and super PACs that have donated now. We see that rise after the Citizens United ruling. What's the difference between PACs and super PACs? This slide shows linked to your organizer, so you can definitely watch this. I also posted it at the end. Here we have some graphics that show you about cost per vote in Virginia for the 2013 governor race, just to kind of give you an idea. What can we infer about these? McAuliffe spent the most, and he won. He significantly outspent Ken Cuccinelli. Terry McAuliffe wins the election at the time. We see some more based on the trends in campaign spending, on what everybody spends their money on over the past few years, up to about 2015. Still, TV and radio hold supreme. We also see votes received versus money spent. We see a relationship between winning and losing. Ties, right? The amount of money spent shows a larger percentage of votes received. Again, going back to that candidate that spends the most typically wins. Then we see about online spending and how much over the past few years that shift has started to occur where less money is spent on radio and TV ads and more is being dedicated to online spending as more people are connected to the internet or online. We can look at this online versus the Postal Service, basically the types of campaign advertisements we see. We are beginning to see a rise over the past few years in digital campaign advertisements as opposed to our traditional paper I've showed you in class before. So what is so important about all of this to understand? Well, running for a political office is extremely expensive and the costs impact who can participate. Just think about who's ran for office over the past few years. These people that do end up running and sometimes winning, they're all independently wealthy and they have extensive fundraising experience. All right, so please fill in your organizer and now begin your simulation activity on the second page. You're going to decide where to spend the money for your political campaign. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.